Hello, my name is Candace Morris, and I will be presenting my final project for Ramapo College's Master of Science in Technology. For my project, I chose a U.S. History unit that focuses on the Great Depression. I teach an 8th grade self-contained special education class in the Orange Public School District. All the students I have an IEP, or individual education plan, that states specific modifications. Some of these modifications include chunking the reading, visual aids, assessments read aloud, modified tests and quizzes, notes and study guides, and etc. Other differentiation that is listed in the curriculum include giving students menu options for projects, guided notes or worksheets, speech or text software or other assistive technology, and graphic organizers or outlines. So for the learning objectives or learning targets, having students understand, evaluate, analyze, and construct the events that led up to the stock market crash, how the crash affected the economy, banks, and businesses, the new policies adopted by the government, such as the New Deal and Social Security Act, effects of the Dust Bowl, and lastly, the hard times Americans faced during the time period. As you may already know, if you are a teacher, Bloom's taxonomy uses a 6-tier approach to learning, starting with remembering and going up to the highest level of Bloom's, which is creating. With the unit I plan to hit every tier of the Bloom's taxonomy, from students remembering what they learned by taking quizzes, all the way up to creating their final project at the end. So most students have different ways that they are learning, or have one or two ways that work best for them. In this unit, I try to incorporate all the different types of intelligences. The majority of the unit will benefit visual, linguistic, logical, musical, spatial, and kinesthetic learners. This is very important for me to incorporate because some of my students have this listed as a modification in their IEP. SMAR stands for the Framework for Integrating Technology into Your Teaching and the Learning Process. Here, you will see the ways that technology was used to either substitute, augment, modify, or redefine activities or lessons that you normally would do inside the classroom. So I used different technology instead of doing like paper and pencil quizzes or notes, and used some sort of technology instead. Also, for the collaboration piece for modification, I had students collaborate on the Google Slides instead of having them do it one-on-one. As for the standards, I am located in New Jersey, so I will be using the New Jersey Core Curriculum Content Standards. All of the standards I used are social studies related and based on the time period of the Great Depression. Standards range from government policies, effects of the Dust Bowl, stock market crash, and the effects on different people and regions living in the United States. Before I get into the lessons, here's a brief overview of assessments I will use throughout the unit. I will use a combination of formative, summative, and authentic assessments. The formative assessments will include participation during class discussions, classwork, and Kahoot games. Summative assessments will be the quizzes for the mid-unit and end unit. And lastly, the authentic assessment will be the final project. So, let's get to the lessons. When you first go onto my site, you will see the table of contents. Here is where you can access all the lessons, as well as the teacher page and credits page. So lesson 1 is Introduction to the Great Depression and the Stock Market Crash. Students will complete 4 different steps in order to move on to the next lesson. I may also add that each step was made into a button, so when students click on it, it takes them to that part of the lesson. So the first step would be the slideshow and with the note sheet, the YouTube video, and then lastly is the Kahoot game. So here I have just a brief overview of what each of them look like. So here's my slideshow. These two go hand in hand each step. So once they watch the slideshow, they will go through and look at the Google Doc, which has their notes. Each slide is listed for them. And then at the end of the Google Doc, underneath their notes, they will have 3 different questions that they will have to answer about the slideshow. That just shows their comprehension of the notes. So for step 3, students will watch a 4-minute YouTube video that goes over more about the Great Depression and the stock market crash. Once they watch that, they will then play the Kahoot game, which serves as a formative assessment. This game can either be played as a whole class activity or independently at home if we are still doing distance learning at the time. So let's move on to lesson 2, which is Roosevelt's New Deal and other policies. Again, there are clickable buttons for students to use to navigate to each part of the lesson. Here you will see I have 3 parts, as well as the Newsella article with questions, a Quizlet, and once the lesson is complete, they will take a mid-unit assessment, which is in the form of a Google form. So in step 1, here's the Newsella article with questions. I laid this out a little bit differently. Instead of having the students use the Newsella website to complete, I modified the lesson for the students by putting it on a Google Doc. This way, I can chunk the reading into smaller parts and have questions after each section. This benefits my students because when seeing a long article, they sometimes get overwhelmed and skip some, if not all the reading. Then when it comes time to the questions, they just guess because they didn't read it fully. So what I've done this in the past and it works pretty well. Plus, I can modify the reading still for each student who's on a different level and then give them a separate Google Doc for it in Google Classroom. In the next step, students will practice what they've learned in Quizlet. I love using Quizlet because students can go at their own pace and choose what activities they want to complete. I can also track their progress and see if I need to review anything before they take the mid-unit assessment in step 3, which is the Google form. Using Google Forms is awesome because I get the data right away, and it's been a real game changer for me in my classroom. Next is lesson 3, which focuses on the Dust Bowl. Students will again take notes from the slideshow in steps 1 and 2, watch a YouTube video, and then play a Kahoot game. So I'm kind of consistent with this. I did this for every other lesson with the notes, slideshow, video, and Kahoot game. My students really need the consistency, so that's why I did it this way. Kept the same layout. So here is the slideshow and the digital notes to go along with the slideshow on the Dust Bowl. Here's the Dust Bowl video, the YouTube video that they're going to watch, and then the Kahoot game that will be used as a formative assessment. Lastly, before we get to the final project, is lesson 4. So they will be working on looking at the life of an American living during the Great Depression. So again, I love giving my students Newsella, which focuses on how people reacted and what life was like for them and how they coped during the Great Depression. And I love doing it this way because it's a lot easier for my students to navigate and to read. Then they have the Quizlet as a review. And then they will take the end of the unit assessment, which focuses on all 4 lessons of the unit. And those are all my lessons. So now let's get to the moment we've all been waiting for, the final project. So I gave my students a choice as to what project they wanted to create. Option 1 is a Google slideshow. Option 2 is a Canva infographic. And option 3 is a Flipgrid video. For option 1, students will choose a famous person alive during the Great Depression, conduct research on them, and then create a Google slideshow presentation. To go over the directions and model the project, I posted a tutorial video located underneath the directions. They have 7 choices to choose from Presidents Herbert Hoover and Franklin D. Roosevelt to Babe Ruth and Audrey Hepburn. Students may choose to work with a partner or work independently. Google Slides are a great way for students to collaborate because one student can set up the slideshow and share it with their partner, and that way both of them can work on it at the same time together. For the research aspect of the project, I gave the students a starting point with a website that showcases each person and gives a brief biography. I also give them a template to follow for their slideshow so they know exactly what to include on each slide. Of course, they will need to have a works cited page where they list all the sources they used as well. Once their slideshow is complete, they will go through and edit it and then post the final project assignment on Google Classroom. The second option is a Canva infographic. This will be in the form of a timeline of the 6 major events of the Great Depression. Again, I made a tutorial video to show students how to navigate Canva and provide them with a model. Students are encouraged to use their notes from the lessons as well as research events on their own. All the events need to be in chronological order and be detailed, not just the date and the event. Once students are finished, they go back and edit their work and then share their Canva by posting the link in the final project assignment in Google Classroom. And lastly, option 3, the Flipgrid video. Now, originally I wanted this to be a group project where one person would be the interviewer and the other would be the interviewee. Due to the school closures, I had to change it to an independent project where one student would pretend they are a person living during the Great Depression and they are speaking about it in a video. Anyway, students will first have to answer the questions I have listed here and create their script based on their answers to the questions. Once they have done that, they'll record their video. Their video should be between 3 to 5 minutes long. I have again posted a tutorial video for students to refer to if they never used Flipgrid before. After they record and feel comfortable with their finished product, they will post a link to their video in the final project assignment in Google Classroom. So, but how will my students be graded? So here is a final project rubric I've created for this specific project. Of course, I had to include the standards, and I basically based it on whether the standards were evident in their projects. The second item being graded is whether or not students followed all the directions for the project they chose. The third one is creativity and organization. The last two are specific to only some of the options. The presentation portion is only for the students who did the Flipgrid video. Grammar and punctuation and spelling is only applicable for the slideshow and Canva options. At the end of the rubric, I also included a self-assessment my students will conduct on themselves. I usually include this with all my authentic assessments, such as research projects and essays. The self-assessment is usually done before I grade it, so students are not swayed by the grade or comments I give them. Once that's done, I will grade it in conference with the students to discuss how they did. Lastly, here's a list of sites I used when creating my final project. They can also be found on the website on the teacher page. And that's it. That's my project for MSET program at Ramapo College. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and for more information, please visit my website at CMAR7MSET.